Snow fell thick enough to swallow the abandoned city whole. Wind screamed through shattered windows, carrying the scent of metal and old gunpowder. In the center of the white square, they stood laughing when they saw the rifle she carried, a Cold War relic, heavy, obsolete, covered in scratches. "That thing can't even reach 2,000 meters, someone mocked. She didn't answer. She just adjusted her gloves, breathing deep in the skin-cutting cold. And when the shot rang out, the entire battlefield fell silent. The wind cut like surgical steel. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Henley pressed himself against the frozen wall, feeling the ice seep through 3 layers of tactical gear. His breath came out in white clouds that vanished instantly into the blizzard. "Sir, we've got movement on the North Ridge. Spotter confirms at least 4 heavy positions." The voice belonged to Captain Joel Brennan, a 20-year veteran whose steady hands now trembled from something other than cold. Marcus checked his watch. 1,347 hours. In 3 hours, darkness would claim this graveyard of a city. And darkness meant death. They were pinned, 12 soldiers, caught between 2 converging enemy elements in what used to be the industrial district of Volkov Heights. The Russians had abandoned this place 20 years ago when the factories closed. Now it was a maze of concrete and memory, transformed into a killing field by 8 feet of accumulated snow. "Range to primary target?" Marcus asked. 2,950 meters, sir, give or take." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Nearly 3 kilometers, well beyond effective range for standard equipment. The enemy commander had chosen his position with textbook precision high ground, clear lines of sight, far enough to be untouchable by conventional means. And the air support? Grounded. Storm's too heavy. Nothing's flying until tomorrow morning at the earliest. Tomorrow morning. They'd all be frozen corpses by then. Sergeant Devin Walsh crawled up beside him, his weathered face gray with exhaustion. "Sir, we need to move. Those mortars are walking closer. Another 10 minutes and they'll have our exact position dialed in." "Move where, Walsh?" "North is a kill zone. South puts us in open terrain. East and west both have elevated shooters, waiting for exactly that decision." "Then we dig in and pray?" Marcus didn't answer. Prayer had stopped working somewhere around 0900 hours when the ambush had collapsed their planned route. The radio crackled. Static, then fragments of a voice. "Element 7. Position compromise. Request immediate." More static. Then nothing. Element 7 had been 300 meters to their west. Past tense seemed appropriate now. "We're running out of options," Brennan said quietly. That's when Marcus saw her. She stood apart from the others, near what used to be a loading dock, 30 meters away but somehow existing in a separate space, like a figure from a different photograph overlaid on this one. Major Rachel Harding, tall, lean, with the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. She wore standard winter tactical gear, but something about her presence suggested she would look exactly the same in a summer dress or full armor, unchanging, immovable. And she carried that rifle. "Is that?" Brennan squinted through the snow. "An M21, Marcus confirmed. Vietnam era. Hell, probably older than both of us combined." "She brought that thing to a modern battlefield?" Apparently, Rachel stood with one hand on the weapon, her other hand raised to shield her eyes as she studied the northern ridge through the storm. Her face showed no expression, no fear, no calculation, just that maddening calm that had earned her a reputation for being either brilliant or completely insane. Opinion remained divided on which. Corporal Lynn Mercer, the youngest of their trapped unit, whispered loudly enough for half the group to hear, "What's she even doing here?" "I thought she was decommissioned." "Transferred," Brennan corrected. "Not quite the same thing. Transferred because no unit wanted her." "I heard stories." "Everyone's heard stories," Walsh muttered. "Doesn't make them true." But the way he said it suggested he believed at least some of them. Rachel Harding, the woman who disappeared for 18 months and came back different. The woman who'd scored perfect marks on every technical assessment but failed every team evaluation. The woman who'd turned down 3 promotions and chosen to carry a rifle that belonged in a museum. Marcus had read her file. What little of it wasn't redacted. The readable parts said, "Exceptional marksman, 94% accuracy beyond 1,000 meters, recommended for advanced tactical development." The redacted parts, those were the interesting sections. Whole years missing. Mission after mission listed with nothing but black bars and classified stamps. Something had happened. Something that transformed a promising young soldier into this ghost who stood in snowstorms studying impossible angles. The mortars resumed. Closer now. Marcus made a decision he knew he'd regret. "Major Harding," he called out. She turned her head slowly, acknowledging him without urgency. "Your assessment?" Rachel walked over. Her boots made no sound in the deep snow. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried perfectly despite the wind. "You need someone to take out their coordinator, the one directing fire from the North Ridge observation post. Without him, their mortars lose synchronization. You'll have a window." "I'm aware of the tactical situation, Major. I'm asking if you have a solution." "I can make the shot." Several soldiers within earshot turned to stare. Brennan actually laughed, a short, harsh bark that died quickly. "You're talking about 3,000 meters in a blizzard," Marcus said carefully. 2,950, Rachel corrected. "And yes, that's beyond maximum effective range for anything we're carrying, including that antique you insist on using. For most rifles, not for this one, not for me." The conviction in her voice wasn't arrogance. It was something colder. Statement of fact delivered like a weather report. Specialist Gary Thornton, their primary marksman, stepped forward. "Sir, with all respect, I've been shooting competitively for 12 years. That distance, in these conditions, with that equipment, it's not possible. The bullet drop alone will be compensated for," Rachel finished, "along with Coriolis effect, thermal drift, and wind variance across 3 climate bands." "You've calculated all that? Just by looking?" Thornton's jaw worked silently. He wanted to argue, but couldn't find the angle. Marcus studied Rachel's face. Those gray eyes showed nothing. No doubt. No bravado. Just waiting. "If you miss," he said, "they'll have our exact position from the muzzle flash. They'll concentrate fire here. We'll all die. I won't miss." "You can't guarantee that." "I can." The wind howled. Snow accumulated on their shoulders like ash from some ancient fire. Marcus thought about his options. He thought about 12 soldiers counting on him to get them home. He thought about the young corporal who still wrote letters to her grandmother every week. He thought about legacy, reputation, and how wrong decisions looked in after-action reports. Then he thought about the cold creeping into his bones and the absolute certainty in Rachel Harding's voice. "Set up your shot," he said finally. Rachel moved with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion. She dropped her pack, extracted a weatherproof mat, and spread it across a patch of elevated rubble that offered good sight lines to the north. The position wasn't perfect. Nothing in this frozen hell was perfect, but it provided stability and partial cover. Behind her, the whispers started. "She's actually going to try it. Suicide shot. We're dead. Why did they even send her with us?" Rachel heard every word. She always did. She'd learned years ago that superior hearing was both blessing and curse. You caught enemy movements early, but you also caught every doubt, every sneer, every cruel assessment whispered behind your back. She attached her bipod legs with quick, practiced twists. The M21 weighed 14 pounds loaded. Most modern sniper systems were heavier, but they compensated with advanced optics, stabilization systems, computerized ballistics calculators. This rifle had none of that. Just cold steel, seasoned wood, and glass that had been ground and polished 40 years before she was born. Sergeant Tanya Richardson knelt nearby, ostensibly checking equipment but clearly watching Rachel work. "You really think you can make this?" Richardson asked. Her tone wasn't mocking, just genuinely curious. "Because the mathematics work out. There's more to shooting than math. Not at this distance. At this distance, it's all math. Everything else is noise." Richardson absorbed that. "The men don't trust you." "I know. Does that bother you?" Rachel adjusted the rifle's position, making minute corrections. "Whether they trust me won't affect the bullet's trajectory." "That's not what I asked." For a moment, Rachel paused, then continued her work. "It stopped bothering me the day I realized trust is something you earn, but competence is something you demonstrate. I've stopped trying to convince people with words." She pulled out her rangefinder. Old school mechanical, no batteries to fail in the cold. "Why that rifle?" Richardson pressed. "Everyone's dying to know. You could carry something modern, something with all the advantages." Rachel sighted through the scope, making mental calculations. This rifle killed 147 enemy combatants in Vietnam, all confirmed, all at ranges exceeding 800 meters. It was carried by Staff Sergeant Edward Harding through 3 tours. "Your father? Grandfather. He taught me to shoot when I was 8. Every summer, every weekend. By the time I was 12, I could group shots at 600 meters. She made a small adjustment. He died when I was 16. Left me this rifle and one piece of advice. Modern equipment fails. Good fundamentals don't. Richardson was quiet for a moment. Then, I heard you were with Special Activities Division, before you transferred here. You heard wrong. The redactions in your file suggest otherwise. The redactions suggest people like asking questions that don't have answers. Rachel's voice remained level. Sometimes things happen that are too complicated for simple explanations, so they black out the words and let people imagine whatever keeps them quiet. And what really happened? Rachel turned to look at her directly. I learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one you're aiming at, it's the one who convinces you to aim at the wrong target. Before Richardson could respond, Captain Brennan approached with Lieutenant Colonel Henley. We need confirmation on your ballistics, Major, Brennan said, not hostile but deeply skeptical. Walk me through your math. Rachel stood, pulling out a small waterproof notebook. Her handwriting was precise, measured. Target elevation, 187 meters above our position. Range, 2,950 meters. Temperature, -18 Celsius. Humidity, 73%. Wind, northwest at 22 kilometers per hour at ground level, estimated 35 at mid-range, 42 at target elevation. She flipped a page. The M21 fires 7.62x 51mm NATO, using M118 LR ammunition, 175 grain bullet, muzzle velocity 2,600 feet per second. At this range, time of flight, approximately 4.2 seconds. Total drop, 38 meters accounting for gravity. Drift from crosswind, 6.4 meters. Coriolis effect at this latitude, additional 0.3 meters right. Brennan's eyebrows rose. You calculated all that without a computer? The formulas haven't changed since Newton. I just applied them. And you're confident in these numbers? Mathematics doesn't care about confidence. Either the calculations are correct, or they aren't. I've checked them 3 times. Marcus stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Major, I need you to understand what's at stake. If you take this shot and miss, I won't miss. You keep saying that, because it's true. Nothing is certain in combat. Rachel held his gaze. The uncertainty isn't in my shooting, sir. It's in whether you'll give me permission to try. The challenge hung in the frozen air between them. Corporal Mercer spoke up from where she was crouched behind cover. Sir, with respect, what do we have to lose? We're dead if we stay here. Dead if we try to move. At least this way we go down fighting. We go down after handing them our exact position on a silver platter, Thornton countered. That muzzle flash will light up like a Christmas tree. Then we move immediately after, Mercer shot back. We don't wait around. Move where? You said yourself. Enough, Marcus cut them off. He turned back to Rachel. 1 shot. If you miss, we displace immediately to the southwest corner. Agreed? Agreed. And if you make it? If you actually drop a target at 3,000 meters? Rachel's expression didn't change. Then you'll have 5 minutes while their command structure reorganizes. Use them wisely. Marcus looked at Brennan. Something passed between them, some silent communication built on years of shared decisions and consequences. Finally, Brennan shrugged. We're out of good options, sir. Might as well try a crazy one. Marcus nodded slowly. Set up the shot, Major, but I'm putting Thornton on a spotter scope. I want independent confirmation of your adjustments. Understood. Thornton moved into position reluctantly. He clearly didn't believe in this shot, but orders were orders. Rachel returned to her rifle. The wind had picked up, carrying more snow. Visibility was deteriorating by the minute. She chambered a round. The metallic click seemed impossibly loud. Behind her, 12 soldiers waited, some with hope, most with resignation, all watching to see if the woman with the obsolete rifle could do the impossible, or if she'd just given them all death sentences. The rifle lay across the mat like a sleeping predator, 43 years old. Built in 1982 at the Rock Island Arsenal, serial number etched into the receiver, 79324. Rachel had memorized every number, every scratch, every microscopic imperfection in the barrel. This weapon was more familiar to her than her own face. Specialist Derek Paulson edged closer, his curiosity overcoming his skepticism. Can I ask a question, Major? Why not use Thornton's rifle? He's got an M2010 with an advanced scope, built-in ballistic computer, the works. Everything designed for exactly this kind of shot. Rachel didn't look up from her preparations. Tell me, Specialist, what happens when that ballistic computer gets moisture inside, or when the battery dies, or when an electromagnetic pulse fries the circuits? Well, I mean, there are backups. There are redundancies, not backups. The moment you rely on electronics, you introduce failure points you can't control. She ran her hand along the rifle's stock. This weapon has 0 electronics, 0 failure points. It operates on physics and mechanical precision. The same principles that worked in 1968 work today, but the accuracy is limited by the shooter, not the equipment. A computerized scope can't compensate for poor fundamentals. It can only mask them temporarily. Rachel looked up at him. How many rounds have you put through your primary weapon specialist? I qualify every 6 months, ma'am. Expert marksman rating. That's not what I asked. How many rounds? Total. In your entire career. Paulson hesitated. Maybe 15,000? I've put 43,000 rounds through this rifle. I know its personality. I know it drifts 0.2 millimeters left after 30 rounds. I know the trigger breaks at exactly 3 pounds, 9 ounces. I know that in extreme cold, the first shot will group 1.3 inches high at 100 meters until the barrel reaches thermal equilibrium. She turned back to her preparation. You can have all the technology in the world, specialist, but if you don't know your weapon intimately enough to predict its behavior instinctively, all that technology is just expensive noise. Lieutenant Bridget Calloway, their communications officer, crawled over. Major, I've been trying to raise headquarters for aerial reconnaissance. If we could get even one pass with thermal imaging, they'd tell you what I already know, Rachel interrupted. 4 primary firing positions on the North Ridge, estimated 15 to 20 personnel, 1 command element coordinating fire. That's your target. How can you possibly know their exact setup? By watching their fire pattern. Mortars don't fall randomly. There's rhythm, synchronization. Someone's calling the shots, and everyone else is executing. Take out the coordinator, the rhythm breaks. Calloway exchanged glances with Paulson. Both looked unconvinced, but impressed despite themselves. Thornton settled in beside Rachel with his spotter scope. All right, I've got the ridge. Visibility is terrible, but I can make out structures. He paused. Jesus, you weren't kidding about the range. I can barely resolve details. You don't need details, Rachel said. You need the command post. 3rd structure from the west edge. 2-story, partial roof collapse. Radio antenna visible above the snow line. Thornton adjusted his scope. Waited. Then, how the hell did you spot that? Because that's where I'd put a command element. High enough for communications. Reinforced enough to survive counter-battery fire. Positioned to oversee the entire kill zone. Rachel chambered her round with deliberate care. People are predictable. Especially trained people. They follow doctrine. And doctrine prioritizes practicality over creativity. You sound like you've done this before. Rachel's hands stilled for a fraction of a second, then continued. Once or twice. Something in her tone made Thornton decide not to pursue that line of questioning. Marcus moved into position where he could see both Rachel and the battlefield. Time check. 1,421 hours, Brennan reported. We've got maybe 90 minutes before the light fails completely. Major Harding, if you're going to take this shot, it needs to be now. Conditions are only getting worse. Rachel settled into her shooting position. Prone, legs spread for stability. Left hand supporting the rifle's forestock. Right hand on the grip with her finger resting outside the trigger guard. She'd taken this position 10,000 times. It felt like coming home. Talk me through your holdover, Thornton said, his skepticism giving way to professional interest. Target is 2,950 meters, 187 meters elevated. Bullet drop at that range with this ammunition is 38 meters. Wind drift, factoring in the 3 climate bands, 6.4 meters right. Coriolis effect, 0.3 meters additional right. Temperature drop decreases air density, reducing drag increases velocity by approximately 2.3%. Total correction. She made minute adjustments to her scope. Is 12 mils elevation, 4.7 mils windage right. Thornton checked his own calculations on a tablet. His eyes widened. That's actually correct. Down to the 10th of a mil. I don't round. Apparently not. He squinted through his scope again. But Major, even with perfect corrections, we're talking about a target the size of a human torso at 3 kilometers in a snowstorm. The margin of error is acceptable if your fundamentals are sound. Nothing about this is sound. Rachel's voice dropped even quieter. Sergeant, I've made this exact shot before. Different location, different target. Same distance, same conditions. The bullet doesn't know it's supposed to be impossible. It just follows physics. When? When did you make this shot? Somewhere that doesn't exist in any official record. She settled her cheek against the stock, eye aligned with the scope. Somewhere they black out afterward and pretend never happened. The silence that followed was heavier than the snow. Thornton broke it. I've got eyes on the structure. No positive ID on personnel yet. Too much interference. You won't see them. They're inside, behind thermal shielding. But the coordinator will be at the highest point with line of sight to his mortar teams. Second floor, northeast corner window. You can't possibly know that. I don't know it. I'm calculating probability. But it's a 94% probability. I'll take those odds. Marcus knelt beside them. Major, last chance. Are you absolutely certain about this? Rachel breathed slowly. In, out. Watching the wind through her scope, seeing the patterns invisible to others, reading the snow like a language. Sir, the only thing I'm uncertain about is why you're still asking. And in that moment, Marcus understood. This woman didn't doubt, couldn't doubt. Somewhere in those redacted years, something had stripped away every hesitation and left only cold precision. It should have been frightening. Instead, it was strangely reassuring. Take your shot, Major. Rachel's finger moved to the trigger. Wind check, she said softly. Northwest, gusting 20 to 25 at your position, Calloway reported, watching her handheld anemometer. Copy. Thornton, confirmed target structure. Confirmed. Third from west, 2-story, antenna visible, all personnel, reduced noise. I need to hear the environment. Everyone froze. The battlefield narrowed to a tunnel. Rachel could feel her heartbeat, could feel the cold air moving in and out of her lungs, could feel the rifle as an extension of her own skeleton. 4.2 seconds. That's how long the bullet would fly. 4.2 seconds between intention and consequence, between life and death, between vindication and catastrophe. She exhaled slowly, found the natural pause between breaths, the pause where everything stopped, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder like a living thing. The sound was enormous, a sharp crack that echoed off frozen concrete and rolled across the white battlefield like thunder given physical form. Then, silence. Not absence of sound, something deeper. A held breath, a suspended moment. 12 soldiers frozen in place. 12 pairs of eyes locked on the northern ridge, waiting. The bullet traveled through space at 793 meters per second, spinning at 2,700 rotations per minute. A tiny missile following the arc Rachel had plotted in her mind. 1 second. Snow crystals shattered as the projectile punched through air thick with moisture. The shockwave left a momentary trail, invisible but real, disturbing the storm's natural chaos. 2 seconds. Gravity pulled, wind pushed. The Earth's rotation bent the trajectory infinitesimally right. Every variable Rachel had calculated played out in fractions of millimeters. 3 seconds. The bullet crossed the halfway mark, slowing now, losing energy to air resistance and cold, but still following the precise path carved by physics and intention. 4 seconds. Thornton's voice, barely a whisper. I've lost visual on the projectile. Rachel didn't move, didn't breathe. Her eye remained pressed to the scope, watching the target window through the swirling white. 4.1 seconds. Distance traveled. 2,947 meters. 3 meters to go. 4.2 seconds. The glass in the target window shattered. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, through Thornton's spotter scope, impact. I have impact on the structure. Second floor, northeast corner, right where you called it. Confirmation of target? Marcus demanded. Wait. Movement. Multiple personnel exiting the structure, disorganized. There, Calloway's radio crackled. Enemy communications, intercepted and decoded by their intelligence suite. The Russian voices came through panicked, overlapping. Командир поражен. Нужна медицинская помощь. Откуда выстрел? Commander hit. Need medical assistance. Where did the shot come from? Thornton pulled away from his scope, his face pale. Jesus Christ, you actually hit him. You actually hit a human target at 2,950 meters in a blizzard with a rifle older than my parents. Rachel worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing. It spun through the air, brass glinting, and disappeared into the snow. Told you, she said simply, but Marcus was already moving. Brennan, get everyone ready to displace. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they reorganize. Where to, sir? Southwest corner, just like we planned. They'll be focused on the north, trying to figure out where that shot came from. We slip out the other direction. What about counterfire? Won't come. Not yet. Rachel stood, beginning to break down her position. They don't know where I am. That distance, in this weather, they'll assume it came from somewhere much closer. They'll be searching the wrong grid squares. She was right. The enemy mortars had gone silent. The organized, synchronized bombardment that had been slowly bracketing their position gone, replaced by confusion, chaos, the disintegration of command and control. One shot, one bullet, one life ended, and an entire operation collapsed. Sergeant Richardson watched Rachel pack her rifle with the same methodical care she'd used to set it up. How does it feel? How does what feel? Killing someone from 3 kilometers away. Someone you never saw. Someone who never saw you. Rachel paused. For a moment, something flickered behind those gray eyes. Something that might have been human emotion. It feels like mathematics working correctly, she said finally. Nothing more. Nothing less. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They moved out in a tactical column, low and fast, using the snow and rubble for concealment. Behind them, the northern ridge descended into chaos. Radio intercepts painted a picture of total disarray, junior officers screaming for orders, medical teams trying to save their coordinator, scouts searching frantically for the source of the impossible shot. By the time they realized where the Americans had been, the Americans were gone. The extraction point was 800 meters southwest, a collapsed warehouse where a transport vehicle would meet them at dusk. They made it in 14 minutes, sliding through blown-out walls and frozen alleys like ghosts. No casualties, no losses. Against all odds, they'd survived. As they waited in the warehouse's relative shelter, Corporal Mercer approached Rachel. The young woman's hands were shaking adrenaline crash after hours of terror. "Major, I just wanted to say, we all thought." She struggled for words. "Thank you." Rachel nodded once. "You're welcome. Can I ask something?" "You just did." Mercer smiled weakly. "Why do you do this?" "The solitary thing, the old rifle, keeping everyone at arm's length. You just saved all our lives. People should respect that. People should want you around." Rachel looked at her for a long moment. "Corporal, respect earned from one good shot lasts exactly until the next time you need to prove yourself, and the time after that, and the time after that." She pulled out a cloth and began cleaning her rifle, removing every trace of snow and moisture. "I learned a long time ago that trying to be liked is exhausting. Being competent is simpler, but you must get lonely. Loneliness is just another variable to account for. Like wind, like cold. You acknowledge it, compensate for it, and keep moving." Mercer watched her work. "Were you always like this?" Something in that single syllable closed the door on further questions. Marcus gathered his command element, Brennan, Richardson, and now Rachel, apparently as they waited for extraction. "I need to know something, Major," he said quietly. "That shot. You said you'd made it before, in some place that doesn't exist officially." "I did." "How many times?" "3. 3 shots at 3,000 meters in combat conditions?" 3 shots, 3 hits, different locations, different targets, all classified above your clearance level, sir. So don't ask for specifics." Brennan leaned forward. "And the rifle? You said it was your grandfather's, but he died when you were 16. Who trained you after that?" Rachel's hand stilled on her rifle. "People who understood that wars aren't always fought where newspapers can see them. Special activities." "I've already said I can't confirm that." "You just did." Rachel met his eyes. "Then let's agree that this conversation never happened, Captain. Just like those 3 shots never happened. Just like I was never in places that required shots like that." Richardson spoke up. "And now? Why are you here, with us, instead of wherever you were before?" "Because everywhere I was before stopped existing. Missions completed, programs terminated, budgets reallocated." Rachel's voice remained flat, but something underneath suggested old wounds. "Turns out when you're trained for wars nobody admits are happening, you become inconvenient when the wars end. So they shuffled you off to regular units. They integrated me. Official term. Unofficially, they parked me somewhere. I couldn't embarrass anyone. Marcus absorbed this. You're wasted here. I'm exactly where I need to be. That shot you just made, that's not the skill set of a regular infantry officer. That's Tier 1 operator capability." Was. Past tense. Rachel finished her cleaning and packed the rifle away. Tier 1 operators work in teams. They trust each other. They have each other's backs. She looked around at the 12 soldiers who'd survived because of her. "I lost that ability somewhere along the way. So now I operate alone. It's cleaner." "Cleaner," Brennan repeated. You mean lonelier. Same thing. Different words. The sound of approaching engines cut off further conversation. Their extraction had arrived 2 armored vehicles painted in winter camouflage, exhaust creating white clouds in the freezing air. They loaded up quickly. Professional. Efficient. The terror from earlier buried under training and routine. Rachel took a seat in the rear vehicle, rifle case propped beside her. She stared out the small window as they pulled away from the frozen battlefield. Thornton sat across from her. He'd been quiet since witnessing the shot. Finally, he spoke. "I owe you an apology, Major." "You don't." "I do. I didn't think you could make that shot. I didn't think anyone could make that shot. Most people can't. But you did. With a rifle that should have been in a museum. How?" Rachel turned from the window. "Because I practice fundamentals that most modern shooters consider obsolete. Because I learned from someone who fought before technology became a crutch. And because—" She paused. "Because I don't have anything else." The admission hung in the cold air between them. Thornton nodded slowly. "The shot will be in the after-action report. Everyone will know what you did today." "No, they won't." "Sir, I was there. 12 of us witnessed. And tomorrow you'll all be debriefed by intelligence officers who will explain that certain details need to remain classified for operational security reasons. The report will show that we survived an ambush through tactical maneuvering and good fortune. No mention of impossible shots. No mention of Cold War rifles. Just standard military efficiency. That's not fair. Fair would be acknowledging that wars are fought by individuals who do exceptional things. But the military doesn't run on fair. It runs on maintainable narratives." Rachel's expression didn't change. "I'm not complaining. I don't need the recognition. I just need to know I can still do the job. You proved that today. Tomorrow I'll need to prove it again. That's how this works." The vehicle rumbled through the snow, leaving the battlefield behind. Leaving the chaos, the fear, the moment when a single bullet changed everything. In 3 hours, they'd reach the forward operating base. In 6 hours, the debriefing would begin. In 12 hours, the after-action report would be sanitized, classified, and filed away where it wouldn't embarrass anyone. And Rachel Harding would return to being the strange woman with the obsolete rifle who nobody quite trusted but everyone was grateful to have nearby. Just in case. Just in case the mathematics stopped mattering and only the fundamentals remained. Just in case the impossible became necessary. The debriefing room was warm, almost offensively so after hours in the frozen hell outside. Rachel sat in a metal chair, still wearing her winter gear, as 3 intelligence officers reviewed her written statement. They'd separated her from the others, standard procedure when something unusual happened. Something unusual, that's what they were calling it. Commander Patricia Vance led the debriefing. 52 years old, career intelligence, with the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile. "Major Harding, your statement indicates you engaged a target at approximately 3,000 meters. 2,950 meters, confirmed by both laser rangefinder and GPS coordinates, using an M21 rifle." "Correct. In blizzard conditions with visibility under 200 meters. Visibility at my position was 150 meters. Visibility at target was estimated 180 meters based on density variations in the storm front." Vance set down the paper. "Major, that shot shouldn't be possible. The enemy coordinator would disagree. If he were still alive. You understand how this looks? It looks like I followed my training and executed my mission. It looks like you're claiming something that strains credibility." Rachel met her gaze without blinking. "Commander, I've provided mathematical calculations, environmental data, and ballistic analysis. I've offered to demonstrate my capability under controlled conditions. What more credibility do you need?" The second officer, a thin man named Hutchins, leaned forward. "We've verified the enemy casualty. Their field commander was killed by a single shot to the upper torso, definitely 7.62 NATO round. The trajectory calculations you provided are mathematically sound." "So what's the problem?" Rachel asked. "The problem," Vance said slowly, "is that if we put this in an official report, every wannabe sniper in the military will think they can duplicate it. We'll have soldiers taking shots they can't make, wasting ammunition, exposing their positions, then classify it. We intend to. But we need to understand exactly what happened. Because this wasn't luck, was it, Major? You've made shots like this before." It wasn't a question. Rachel said nothing. "We've reviewed your file," Hutchins said. "Or what's available of it. Large sections are restricted above our clearance. But there are patterns. Unexplained gaps in your service record. missions that officially never happened, and a training profile that suggests capabilities far beyond conventional special operations. I'm not at liberty to discuss classified operations. We're not asking you to discuss them. We're asking you to confirm that this wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime miracle shot. We're asking if you can repeat this performance if needed. Rachel considered her answer carefully. Give me proper environmental conditions, adequate preparation time, and a clear target. Yes, I can repeat it. How often have you made shots at this range? In combat or training? Both. Training. Approximately 200 times at ranges between 2,800 and 3,200 meters. Success rate of 73%. Combat. 3 confirmed kills at similar distances. 3 shots, 3 hits. The room went silent. Vance and Hutchins exchanged glances. The third officer, who hadn't spoken, was typing rapidly on a tablet. 3 for 3 in combat, Vance repeated. All beyond 2,500 meters? When? Where? Classified. Under whose authority? Classified. Major Harding, we're trying to help you here. With respect, Commander, you're trying to figure out what box to put me in, whether I'm an asset or a liability, whether to promote me or discharge me, whether to use me or bury me. Rachel's voice remained calm. I don't need help. I need to be left alone to do my job. Today, my job was keeping 12 soldiers alive. I did that. Everything else is administrative noise. Vance's expression hardened. You don't get to decide what matters, Major. And you don't get to know everything about my past, Commander. Some doors stay locked for good reasons. The Army doesn't like mysteries. The Army is full of mysteries, most of them wearing uniforms and following orders they don't fully understand. Rachel stood. Are we done here? We're done when I say we're done. Then I'll be more specific. Am I being detained for disciplinary reasons? Am I under investigation for violations of protocol? Or am I being debriefed about a successful combat action? Hutchins intervened before Vance could respond. You're being debriefed, Major. Standard procedure. Please sit down. Rachel remained standing. I've provided all relevant information about today's action. My written statement is complete and accurate. If you need additional details about classified operations from my past, submit a request through proper channels. Until then, I'm returning to my unit. She walked to the door. Major, Vance called out, one more question. Rachel turned. That rifle, why does it matter so much to you? For the first time, Rachel's expression softened. Just barely. Just enough to seem human. My grandfather carried it through 3 tours. He came home with it. Most men didn't come home at all. She looked down at the rifle case in her hand. It's the last thing he gave me before he died. He said, this rifle kept me alive. Maybe someday it'll keep you alive too. And has it. 27 times in combat, not counting today. 27. Vance's eyes widened. How long have you been in active combat operations? Long enough to know which questions have answers and which questions have classifications. Rachel opened the door. Good afternoon, Commander. She walked out before they could stop her. In the hallway, she found Lieutenant Colonel Henley waiting. He fell into step beside her. That went well, he said dryly. They'll classify the report and move on. Probably. But you made an impression. I always do. Just not usually a positive one. They walked in silence for a moment. The men are talking, Marcus said. About the shot. About you. Thornton especially. He's telling everyone who will listen that he witnessed the impossible. He'll stop after the classification order comes down. Maybe. But respect doesn't disappear just because a report gets redacted. Marcus stopped walking, forcing Rachel to stop as well. You saved all of us today. That matters. Today. Tomorrow they'll remember the weird woman with the ancient rifle who doesn't fit in. Is that really what you think? Or is that just easier than accepting that people might actually appreciate you? Rachel looked at him. Really looked. For the first time since they'd met. Sir, I've learned that appreciation is temporary. Competence is permanent. I'd rather be the soldier people rely on than the soldier people like. Why not both? Because liking requires vulnerability. And vulnerability gets people killed. Marcus absorbed that. Something happened to you. In those classified missions. Something that made you this way. Lots of things happened. Most of them involved learning that the world is more complicated than anyone admits, and that the people who see that complexity are often pushed aside because complexity makes command uncomfortable. You could have a different career. Better postings, promotions, recognition. I could also be dead, or compromised, or used. Rachel adjusted her rifle case. This is simpler. I show up, I do the job, I leave, no complications. That's not a life. It's the life I chose after the one I had was taken away. Before Marcus could respond, his radio crackled. All personnel, report for movement briefing, transport departing in 3 hours. They were being reassigned already. Typical military efficiency, barely time to process one crisis before being shipped to the next. Rachel nodded once. Thank you for giving me the shot, sir. Thank you for making it. She walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the hallway, watching her go. Later that evening, as the unit prepared to depart, Corporal Mercer found Rachel in the armory, performing maintenance on her rifle. They're telling us we can't talk about what happened, Mercer said. Classification orders. We're supposed to forget the whole thing. Orders are orders, but we're not going to forget. I'm not going to forget. Mercer sat down nearby. You know what the crazy thing is? Before today, I was terrified of you. We all were, this cold, remote woman who didn't seem to give a damn about anyone. And now? Now I realize you care more than any of us. You just show it differently. Rachel paused in her work. Caring gets complicated. Distance is cleaner, maybe. But distance also gets lonely. You've said that before. Because it's true. Mercer stood to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, Major, I'd serve with you again. Any time. Because I know you'd do whatever it took to get us home alive. That's the job. No. The job is to complete the mission. Getting us home alive, that's a choice. And you chose it today. She left before Rachel could respond. Rachel sat alone in the armory, surrounded by weapons and equipment, the rifle disassembled on the bench before her. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, the numbers played through her mind again. 2,950 meters. 4.2 seconds. 1 shot. 1 chance. 1 life ended. 12 lives saved. The mathematics worked out. They always did. But mathematics didn't account for the young corporal's gratitude, or the grudging respect in Thornton's eyes, or the way Marcus had looked at her like she might actually be human after all. Mathematics didn't account for the possibility that distance and competence might not be enough forever, that someday she might want more. Rachel pushed the thought aside and continued her maintenance. The rifle needed care. The rifle always needed care. Everything else was just noise. The transport left at 2,300 hours. Destination classified. Mission classified. Future uncertain. But somewhere in the frozen darkness, a story was being whispered. A story about a woman with an obsolete rifle who made the impossible look easy. The official reports would bury it. The classifications would hide it. But the people who were there, they would remember. And sometimes, in the military, that was the only recognition that mattered. The shot that no one could talk about. The shot that everyone knew happened. The shot that proved that modern equipment might fail, but good fundamentals never do. 2,950 meters. 1 bullet. One voice in the frozen silence saying, I told you so. 6 months later, in a training facility 3,000 miles from that frozen battlefield, a young sniper instructor was teaching advanced marksmanship. Maximum effective range for the M2010 is 1,300 meters, he lectured. Beyond that, environmental factors make consistent accuracy nearly impossible. Anyone who tells you they can hit targets beyond 2,000 meters is either lying or doesn't understand ballistics. A student raised his hand. Sir, I heard there was an incident last winter. Someone made a confirmed kill at almost 3,000 meters. Urban legend, the instructor dismissed. Physically impossible with our current technology. But sir, the reports are classified because they're either false or exaggerated. Trust the mathematics, not the stories. In the back of the classroom, a figure stood in the shadows, gray eyes watching, a rifle case propped against the wall. Rachel Harding smiled slightly. Let them think it was impossible. Let them trust the mathematics. The mathematics worked perfectly fine. When you knew how to read them, when you had the fundamentals, when you carried a Cold War relic that had been killing enemy combatants since before the instructor was born. She turned and walked away, leaving the classroom and its confident dismissals behind. Outside, snow was beginning to fall. Different location, different season, same cold. She pulled her collar up against the wind. Somewhere out there, another impossible shot was waiting. Another mission that officially didn't exist. Another moment when mathematics and belief would collide. And when that moment came, she'd be ready. With her grandfather's rifle. With 43,000 rounds of experience. With the quiet certainty that comes from making 3 for 3 when 3 for 3 shouldn't be possible. The military didn't understand her. Her peers didn't trust her. The after-action reports erased her. But the bullets flew true, and in the end, that was all that mattered. The rifle wasn't obsolete, the woman carrying it wasn't broken, and the shot that froze the battlefield wasn't a miracle. It was just competence meeting opportunity, the way it always had been, the way it always would be. 2,950 meters. One voice saying, "I told you so." Forever.